So thank you for welcoming us. We are from France, and I apologize for our English. She's Cécile Bour. She's a radiologist and the founder of the Cancer Rose group, which is a big group of 7 people dedicated on informing women about breast cancer screening. So she has a big conflict of interest. As a radiologist, she earns money when she does mammography screening, and as founder of Cancer Rose, she is strongly against breast cancer screening. I am family medicine and prescription editor for 30 years, and I have no conflicts of interest, which is easier. So in France, as in many other countries, screening spontaneously rises from 1980 to year 2000. And during that time, mammographs were sold in great quantity to radiologists. And during these 20 years, breast cancer incidence doubled, and breast cancer mortality didn't move at all. So it was a huge success in terms of commercial terms, and not a success at all from the women's point of view. In year 2000, there was the Cochrane screening for breast cancer with mammography, and it has nearly no effect in France. About no one read it, and those who read it said it was bullshit. Namely, the National Institute of Cancer, NCA. And a few years later, Jacques Chirac, who was going to be President of the Republic, decided that organized BCS should be extended to all women from age 50 to age 74 in all France. But at that time, first French whistleblowers began to whistle and to blow. Among them, especially Bernard Junot, who was a researcher in epidemiology and public health, and professor in the National School of Public Health for 20 years. And he issued a report to the Ministry of Health saying that there was too much over-diagnosis and over-treatment, and that breast cancer screening was ineffective. And just after that, the school decided he should take his retreat. So he had to go to Switzerland to work. The next year, 2004, there was effectively extension of the organized BCS to all France. And at that time, other whistleblowers began to work. The FOMANDEP is an organization that works for independent information to doctors and to the public about medicine and pharmacy. And it began to publish about conflicts of interests of investigators on breast cancer screening, namely Laszlo Tabar, about financing, about money and public information on BCS, issued by the Ministry of Health, who had asked some pharmaceutical firms to pay for information about BCS, and these pharmaceutical firms also sell anti-cancer drugs, which seems quite strange. The same firms had strong links with the NCA, that is the National Institute of Cancer in France, and Ministry of Health or politicians. This may seem anecdotal, but it is not, because showing conflicts of interest was really critical for the press to understand something was wrong. They had no idea that the Ministry of Health could promote something that was bad to the women unless they think there might be conflicts of interest. Then there was the work of Prescreen. Of course, I'm editor of Prescreen, so it is wrong for me to say it was fantastic, but it was. This work was a very long work. It started in 2000 when reading the work of Cochrane, the meta-analysis from Cochrane, and for 6 years, because Prescreen decided that they could not decide who was right, the Cochrane people or the critics. So decided to review everything. And it took quite a long time. But it concluded that benefits of breast cancer screening were not proved, and maybe there was no benefit at all, or very small benefit. And harms were demonstrated and often underestimated, and that women were not truly informed. The Prescreen continued to work on breast cancer screening until now, and with time, it seems that benefits are less and less evident, and harms are more and more true. Well, scientific work cannot convince politicians, but if you have solid scientific work, you can convince women, you can convince media, and then you can act on politicians. So next step is pressure from the public and the media. From the time Prescreen published his series of articles, there was a debate among specialists of public health. And for instance, the national school that put Bernard Junot apart a few years earlier decided that there should be a debate on breast cancer screening, and they worked on how to issue ethical information to women on this subject. Then Prescreen, the consumers organization Que Choisir, that is equivalent of which, the Fomendet and Cancer Rose began to coordinate and to have same information campaigns or coordinated information campaigns towards the women and towards the media. Especially Cancer Rose issued a small movie, an internet site, and also conferences and action on medias. There were critical books published in France about breast cancer screening, and popular media began to work on it. Media like Le Monde, and this was very important. And then something quite unexpected happened. The Ministry of Health decided an independent and scientific inquiry.
So I present you the French inquiry. In September 2015, the French Health Minister announces the implementation of an independent civil and scientific inquiry into mammographic screening. It was relevant to think about it now with regard to the scientific controversy. So she appointed an independent steering committee to oversee it with 9 leading healthcare professionals and social health scientists, all of them without any financial or academic conflicts of interest with breast cancer screening. In addition, the French National Cancer Institute, the INCA, nominates a technical support committee for evidence review, and the steering committee oversees a civil consultation with round tables and working sessions. A website was created which provides information about the inquiry and invites the public to submit opinions. 2 consultations took place: a civil consultation with a group of 27 women from different regions and diverse socio-economic groups, and a consultation with a group of 19 health professionals with relevant experience but without ties with screening. Finally, a public meeting took place to present the recommendation and answer public questions. However, straight away, the presentation of the website is questionable. As you can see, there has been no discussion to contest screening, no question of reconsideration. On the contrary, the question is to preserve, to conserve, to improve, to push forward and make breast cancer screening evolve. Interrogation on its relevance is excluded. So in this slide, I show you the contrast between 2 important pages in the report. I will quote you 2 sentences from page 7, which show you the positioning of the French health authorities. After a steady increase in the first years, the participation rate of women invited to organized screening has stabilized since 2008 around 52%. And opened in October 2015, the civil inquiry aimed to induce a collective reflection on the evolution of the screening to increase its relevance, its usefulness, and its quality. So we notice that the concerns are the stagnation of the participation and to maintain screening in a modified form. Nevertheless, page 133, contrary to all expectations, the steering committee presented 2 scenarios in final report in which the word stopping appears clearly. First scenario, complete stopping of screening program. Second scenario, stopping the screening such as presently proposed and complete revision. But counterattacks are coming soon. First, the president of the INCA sent a letter to the health minister supposed to synthesize the final report, but in which he deliberates with violence the report and rejects outright the first scenario. He asserts that according to the confession of the writers of the report, this first scenario would be very risky, generative of inequity and of loss of chance. But we don't find track of these words in the report, not in this way. The writers say that in case of stopping screening, it could be an inequity for these women who undergo individual, personal screening in the wrong way, in an unsuitable timing or unsuitable period of their life. And that could be a social inequity for high-staged cancer, for women who come late to diagnosis, but they wrote that it is presently the case with or without screening. He says too that abandoning the screening on the pretext that these tools are perfectible would be a complete nonsense. He proposes a screening based on the risk level for all women, but in the report this is not a screening strategy. Evaluation of risk is only a part of the usual medical consultation in both scenarios. So, you see, it distorts the reality to suggest that the steering committee agrees to screening, but it is not the case. And of course, he suggests that the institute could manage the reform of screening program. And the second counterattack, it was the public French health agency that published in common with the INCA report, emphasizing the quality of the screening program in contradiction with the report which criticized it a lot. So it is clear that the preference of INCA president goes to the second scenario, which he revisited, reinterpreted, reducing it to a simple adjustment of the current practices that go along the lines of the National Cancer Plan. So women are betrayed. The French Health Minister in October 2017 congratulates herself for the good progress of the October campaign and says in her press release that screening is the best chance to be cured about breast cancer. The 12 points action plan announces in its introduction, screening is a major challenge in public health for reducing breast cancer mortality and morbidity, but also to improve quality of medical care of concerned population. However, she says, too few women choose to go to organized screening. Here are the main proposals of the minister. Creation of information tools for women for decision-making, essentially a leaflet and a website, medical consultation at the age of 50, training to help physicians in communication of the risk and benefit balance and the limits of screening program. But the commitment of stopping the screening hasn't been taken into account and never mentioned. In reality, what we have, a downloadable leaflet and a website was designed by the INCA but with incomplete information. This institute, which had been severely and strongly criticized by citizens on its inability to inform correctly, was assigned the screening program reform and public awareness and information. We see the following inadequacies in leaflet and on the website. Underestimating on the overdiagnosis, overtreatment not mentioned, alleged survival proportion of 99%, the 5 years survival. No visual information with real data like a fact box, although demanded by citizens. Effect of screening on mastectomies not discussed. Screening remains in the P4P that leads to strong financial interest for physicians who are inside to attract and to recruit as many women as possible to participate in mammographic screening. In conclusion, with the new government of the new French President Macron in May 2018, we see the appointment of the new health minister, Madame Buzyn, who was the former director of the INCA. This citizen consultation concept inherited from the French Revolution was instituted in 2015 by French authorities in the aim to reinforce participation to breast cancer screening and not to interrogate on its relevance. Its final report focused on inconsistencies and discrepancies and had asked to stop screening, like the Swiss Medical Board. But French authorities persist in pursuing screening. There is still no change in the law. So, totally, it was a big movement to ensure that nothing changes. However, women and doctors question the breast cancer screening. For instance, medical continuing education organizations ask Cancer Rose, our group, for help in their new programs. So things will change anyway, a little. Thank you all for listening.